I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. I'm Madison.
I'm Chris.
And welcome to the most haunted city on earth. Hey there, ghosts, ghouls, and everything in between. We at the Savannah Underground are extremely excited to say that we have officially launched our Patreon. The link is in our description, or you can search patreon.com/Savannah Underground. So head over to our page and join us for bonus content, merch drops, live investigations of haunted locations, and just getting to know us, because we really want to get to know you. Enjoy the episode and stay spooky, y'all. All right. Welcome, everybody, to another bonus episode of the most haunted city on earth. My name is Madison Timmons.
And I'm Chris Susi.
And we have Luna Taran again.
Hi, guys. I'm Luna Taran, and I'm a ghost tour guide in the Savannah Underground.
Yep. So we are honestly so happy to have Luna back with us. We did another episode, and we had so much to talk about with Indonesian ghosts and folklore that we just had to bring Luna to talk more about that. So actually, before we started rolling, Luna was telling us about a new spirit that her mom told her about this morning. Would you like to tell us a little about it?
So my mom she was invited here, but she's actually a scaredy cat because she's more sensitive than I am. But she told me yesterday after shower, she's like, Luna, I'm like, yeah, do you remember when you were 4 years old and your little sister was 2? I'm like, yeah, I remember somewhat. She's like, yeah, we went to Medan, remember? Medan is like another part of Indonesia. And I said, yeah, I remember that. What's up? Oh my God, Luna, I need to tell you this, but we were staying at the haunted hotel. I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, I couldn't sleep for days, and I always had to hold your dad's hand everywhere, the bathroom, the kitchen, everywhere part of the hotel. I'm like, what? So, and then my mom told me, yeah, so there's this lady, you were 4 and your sister was 2 at the time, but I think they wanted to disturb you, but I've been protecting you. This is called Wewe Gombel. Wewe Gombel is a ghost. She's a lady. She has long hair, and she is completely with no clothing. She's just walking around, and she loves to haunt children, and it's very, very scary. And luckily, my mom has a lot of protection to like protect us. Sorry, my accent. Protect us, and we were just protected. She called the receptionist, right? Yep. Receptionist so many times. Hey, we gotta change hotel room. We don't want to be in this haunted room. Thank you. We don't want to be in this haunted room because it's so haunted, and I can feel something. And you know what? The receptionist said, "Oh, our room is all fully booked." So we were staying in that haunted hotel for 7 days.
Delightful. Yeah. So you were saying that like this spirit was kind of known as like a spirit that if kids stayed out too late, she would come and try to like get you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll insert a photo of it here because she showed it to us, and I was like, well, isn't she just delightful, you know?
Ooh, scary. But also the main thing of Wewe Gombel is that you play, if you go out at night, if children go out at night and stay for too long, too late, then that Wewe Gombel will actually like chase you or haunt you or possess you. But this Wewe Gombel that I've learned from my mother, I think it's because she's desperate for like a child or something. And me and my sister, we were probably the only child, and we were in the most haunted room. So there's that.
Well, I find it endlessly fascinating that in Indonesian ghost lore, ghosts are classified, by their function and this appearance, because in the West we oftentimes will either ascribe a ghost by who they were in their life. We just know that ghost is well that's Tim, Tim the ghost.
Yeah.
But we on a larger scale, and we don't even notice it in the West. We don't talk about this, but there are very specific tasked ghosts that have purposes. The lady in white, the lady in black, the lady in gray, a lot of ladies in colors. But they have specific purposes. Like, a lady in white is oftentimes mistaken for the hitchhiking ghost. because a lot of times a lady in white is seen on the side of the road, and it usually means you're going to have an accident. It usually means that an accident in your life is imminent. A lady in black means that a child in your family is going to die. So it's interesting that we don't really talk about the fact that these spirits are not specific beings, but specific conditions. The boogeyman situation, coming to get you. It's a widespread thing, and I love that there's a name for every type of spirit in Indonesia.
Which is like the names are so like a little like the names itself. When you hear it, it's already scary.
Right.
Like Wewe, like Wewe Gombel. Oh, that gives me creeps. Like Ba Chong, like these names that I've learned and I've heard, it's actually already scary. Like the moment when I had no idea what Pachang is or Wewe Gombel or Sundel Bolong, like when I don't know those words or like when I don't know these names, hearing it scares me to death already. Which is, these names are actually pretty unique itself, yet scary to hear it already.
Oh, sure. It's fascinating because, again, we approach our spirits differently, but, different cultures, like there's a La Llorona, which is very similar to the long black hair, the white dress, but she's looking for her children. So with her, you hear her crying. You hear this wailing of this woman who's mourning, and she's coming for your kids. Bottom line is, you have kids, this ghost might be coming for you. So it again, the function of the spirit identifies it. It's not a specific ghost as much as it is a specific type of ghost.
Yeah, but do you guys remember the day where I told you where there's a demon in my bathroom?
Yes.
So I've actually learned the name. And I finally found it because I asked my uncle that night. It is called Genderuwo. So it is basically like an abominable snowman, but in a version of a scary horror type, I think. I think abominable snowman is also very scary. But it's like
if you ran
Bigfoot,
into
but
one,
yes, absolutely.
But it's like Bigfoot, but the horror version of Bigfoot. Basically, there's fangs, and you guys can see the photo later where we're going to insert it.
It's like it's like an Indonesian cryptid.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because we were just talking about cryptids, and so.
But does it exist in a spiritual plane, or does it exist physically? Like, do people encounter it like troping around? Because when you had introduced it to us, it was a bathroom ghost. Yeah. Is it always a bathroom
it's not
entity,
really a
or is it just your bathroom?
Yes. No. Genderuwo is actually everywhere. Like jinns and Indonesian ghosts and jinns, they're everywhere. So basically, Genderuwo just loves to be in my bathroom because in the back of my bathroom, there's like a hidden dark wall where it's like not even put with anything. It's just my shoe rack and stuff, so it's near my bathroom. So at the same time, the Genderuwo loves to be in a dark spot and loves to be in my bathroom. Sure. So it's not really the bathroom ghost. It's literally everywhere, which is scary.
Well, mind you, bathroom ghost is scary to me. Do not want to encounter the bathroom, the bathroom beastie. But fascinating.
Scary.
Fascinating.
Yep.
Yeah, kind of harping in on the idea of like names for these entities. I feel like that's true in almost any culture that has some kind of monster or ghoul or demon or whatever. They always have a creepy name because they look scary. I'm like, you're not going to see this bloodied face monster and call it kitty. It's like something cutesy or like...
We've done a bad job.
Yeah.
The Jersey Devil has never seemed particularly menacing to me. Mothman is not a particularly scary name. Yeah. Bigfoot sounds pretty cuddly when you think about it.
That's true.
And one of my favorite words is Sasquatch. What a great word. Sasquatch. And Sasquatch, you could be like, okay, that could go either way. that could be very menacing. But we're bad at it. We're like, the lizard man. I was like, oh, okay, the lizard man. The dog man. What's the dog man? Well, he's a man, but he's got a head of a dog. Dog man. And we suck.
We did get Chupacabra right, so that
but
was...
I don't think that's us. That was
that's true. Gosh, we do suck. Okay.
Yeah. I'm like trying to think of scary named things, and we don't really even like the hag of Gullingeechee. Hag, was a long time
Yeah.
just old woman,
Yeah.
concept. So when I first was being introduced to being ridden by the hag, I was thinking of like, the sea witch and things like that. It's the hag. Not thinking, some horrible skin shedding gooey thing.
Yeah.
Which is nightmarish in all attributes. But when it's called the hag, you're like, well, I can handle a hag.
Yeah,
You know.
because like when I actually wanted to learn the English names of this Indonesian ghost, I'm like, okay, what's pocong? I think it's how do I call it in English? Because I've actually never heard the English word myself. Like,
Describe.
so I'll just describe it.
Yeah.
So one time I was talking to a friend and I was talking to him about Indonesian ghosts. And I said, yeah, there's this really scary demon called the pocong. And he's like, oh, what's the English word for that? I should say wrap body ghost because the ghost is wrapped with cloth and something. So that's all I can explain.
So the shroud.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's a English word.
Shrouded hopping beast.
Shrouded.
That's
And that's what we'd call it.
Cloth hopping ghost.
It's the shroud hop. The shroud hop's coming for you.
White cloth hopper.
Yeah. Yeah. And it might just be the nuance of language.
Yeah.
Because we will oftentimes refer to people by their names.
Yeah.
Well, this is where Captain Black walked down, and you're like, oh, it's the ghost of Captain Black. I would also like to point out to viewers that all my life I have heard reference to pirate ghost stories, but I still never heard any. Like I always hear that's like the trope is, the pirate, the ghost captain, and things like that. And I'm like, I'm not sure. I don't even think I've ever, and we talked about this, I've never seen a movie that was specifically about a ghost that was also a pirate. So if you're out there, internet world, show me the ghost pirate movies.
Or if you are a ghost pirate.
Yeah, if you're a ghost pirate. By the way, the Savannah hockey team is called the Ghost Pirates.
Yes.
So there you go. Anyway, back to Indonesian.
Yes.
Well, yes, I have another story to tell when I was in Hong Kong, but I've experienced this. So my friends and I went to this haunted hospital, and it's actually children's hospital. So when I went to the children's hospital, I think it's for like sick children who died long time ago, who died really, really young and stuff. So, but it was abandoned for some reason that Hong Kong won. Probably like build another building for children's hospital, or they just don't want to, or probably the business just completely collapsed. So my friends and I, shout out to Daisy and Meyer, we saw this huge building. It was near central part of Hong Kong. So we were like, you know what? Screw it. Let's jump off the fence because it was already blocked. It was completely abandoned. So we jumped right there, and we actually went to the rooftop first. Like there was a stairs to the rooftop, and beautiful. We can see the whole Hong Kong. But then we went downstairs again, and the door was completely unlocked. So we're like, okay, you know what? Let's go. So when we opened the door, I saw thousands of children and babies staring at me. Probably these lost souls wanted to be saved and everything. But then Meyer and Daisy, my friends, they were not clairvoyant. So when they were just walking, they're just, there's nothing here. But me, I was completely like holding their hands in the middle and just cover my eyes because I was already scared. So when we arrived at the middle of the room, it was like this whole children staring at me. I was like, oh, poor babies. And they were touching me, wanting me to save them. But unfortunately, I do not have those powers to save them. From what I learned, it is related to Indonesian ghost. It is called tuyul. Tuyul are ghost children and babies. Because like I said, like Indonesian ghosts are not just in Indonesia, but it's everywhere. It's in the whole wide world, in America, in Europe, everywhere. So I saw jinns mostly in the hospital, the children's hospital. I saw like lost baby souls, lost children's soul, and I saw jinns as well. That's called tuyul, and they're actually scarier. Probably the tuyuls are actually controlling the kids. Like, you can stay with us, we're good people, but at the end of the day, tuyuls are very demonic children babies, so they're very scary. So guys,
And that is fascinating because in my life, categorizing and trying to figure out classifications of ghosts, I've learned that children ghosts, and the younger a child dies, the more ability they have. Like children ghosts are very vibrant and very solid, and they have a lot of energy that older ghosts don't have, and I attribute that to the lack of learning about life.
Yeah.
Because when we're raised, there are points in our life when we're introduced to death, to the rituals of death, where we're introduced to the temporary nature of life. We're given a scope of life. But when you die very young, you're not given those things. So you just think this is still life. When you die very young, you have nothing to compare it to. So you're like, oh, this is the part of life where I can walk through walls, where no one can see me. And that allows a spirit to feed itself, which is interesting. I call it basically children have more imagination than adults.
Oh, yeah.
So a child can create this imaginary scenario that it thrives in. So children ghosts are also very pesky. They're very touchy-feely, pushy. And in every category I've noted it, and in every time I've dealt with mass children, there's always a demon. There's always a dark creature that is basically feeding on this never-ending font of child. There was a ghost. It's a demon that I call Six Eyes, and I call him Six Eyes because he has 6 eyes. It was easy enough. But he has a chain, and on the chain are children. He's basically run the chain through the children, and he pulls them along because he can torment these children's spirits, and their torment equals reaction, interaction, energy. And I've encountered this spirit once in Savannah, and it is just such an interesting thing because it's like, okay, so there's this folklore that suggests that if you get a lot of children, especially if the children die simultaneously, if it was a massive at a fire or explosion or whatever, then the predatory spirits, the spirits that come in to feed on the recently dead, because the recently dead have more energy to them. And then children have a never-ending supply of energy. In my estimation, an adult ghost will fade over time. You know, it'll pass into shadow and then pass into mist. Children don't do that. Children stick. They stick around because they're exploring and they're learning. And I always say that ghosts can't learn, but children die with an imagination intact. Oh. And that imagination allows them to map the world around them. Whereas adults, and it's not like, well, adults don't have imagination. It's just a different brand of imagination. Like ours are conditioned through a lifetime of experience, where a child's imagination is specifically geared to teach them the world. You know, their imagination is how they create the boundaries around themselves. So, I think that children ghosts, especially baby ghosts are terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
There's a cemetery locally that has a little plot for babies.
Oh.
And if you go there at night,
in Savannah?
It is terrifying. And I've encountered very strange things there. And that, it's called Babyland. And then
might be there.
Gives you this kind of idea that even less cognitive of the world are spirits that exist but have no definitions, no words. They only have want. They only exist in perpetual want.
Wow.
And that want is very powerful too, and it will draw darkness. It will draw, those predatory. And I'd like to say that there's probably light spirits that are also drawn for protection. The sad fact is I never encountered. I don't have a good story about the spirit of light who shows up and is a guardian over these souls. I only have what was that? I don't know. I'm so scared.
That scared me actually. Whoa.
It's interesting too with kids because we've talked about this before, where kids do have such a bright aura to them. Mm-hmm. They're so innocent. And dark things love taking advantage of innocent things, which is why we often see children getting possessed.
Absolutely.
And even adults who have bright auras and a lot of innocence to them and a lot of are very naive. And we've talked about that too, where, when you even go into the astral plane and stuff, if you have these bright energies to you, you're more likely to get hurt because these dark forces want you.
Yeah.
And I can believe it in Savannah, because we had such a long history of really high infant mortality.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That might be why we're seeing so many dark energies congregating with all of these kid ghosts. And it might be why we have so many kid ghosts also.
Yeah. One might lead to the other.
Yeah.
Wow.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Yeah, that reminds me of my friend because it was my mom's friend's daughter, which is also my friend. We're the same age, so her whole family, they're not clairvoyant at all. Like they can't see ghosts or anything. But this daughter of my mom's friend, shout out to Amanda. So Amanda, actually, she's a very quiet girl, and she's not very bright. She's just always quiet, likes to see the world herself, and then suddenly the clairvoyant in her kicks in without, I think she's bright inside, so that's why the clairvoyant kicked in and she started seeing ghosts. One time she told me a story that she was doing. It all started where she was doing an exam, and then she looked straight ahead near the door, and there was a woman standing right here looking at her like that, just with bloody eyes. I think it's kuntilanak or sundalbolong because they're both similar, but it's just staring at her, and she starts screaming, and nobody... actually, everyone was like, what's going on? Are you okay? But she was just screaming and crying, and they had to take her home. And then she confessed that, I'm seeing things right now. It's weird. And then her mom knew of my mom, so she talked to my mom, because my mom's a clairvoyant, and my mom was like, yeah, it's because your daughter's really quiet, and she likes to, look around and probably bright inside, so that's why her clairvoyant senses open up, just because of her personality and her own being. So that can happen as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, and it could have been, too, the fact that sometimes it just takes a strong enough entity to unlock those sorts of things. Something that jarring, like seeing a woman with bloody eyes in a place that is so unnatural for it to be. It sometimes takes that much for people to be like, okay, I am seeing things, and those little things I see in the corners of my eyes are not coincidences.
Yeah.
They're not my brain just doing things. So it could have been a whole combination, sort of.
Ooh, very scary.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too, because then you start to really talk about what scares people, universally. Mm-hmm. What is it that really frightens people? And one of the telltales is how often when people are trying to come up with a scary thing, they come up with very similar images, the sunken eyes and the pallor, the long face, these things that are basically the conditions of a corpse. When you see a corpse going through its degenerative phase, the eyes sink in and the bones become pronounced. And so we have lots of art that has that elongated or that darkened thing. Blood from the eyes is an interesting one, too, because it's such an alarming thing. If somebody was bleeding out of their eyes, it's one of the first things you're like, that's wrong. Something's wrong with you. And I can tell by looking at you that there's something wrong. And so we create these alarming, things across the board. You show a person with bleeding eyes to anyone, and they're like, "Oh, nope, that person's not well.
Nope.
That's not good. I do not like it." and that is one of the fascinating things. Is what scares us universally becomes. I remember the first time I ever saw an actual picture of an anglerfish, which is in the deep sea. It's got this thing with a light on it, but its face is terrifying. It's got teeth that go in all directions. His eyes are just big white globbles, and you're like, that is the monster that a lot of people, H.P. Lovecraft made a living off of creatures like this, but never saw them. We did not see these creatures when we were like, well, you know what's scary? Big sharp teeth, because that'll eat you, and big open eyes, because no matter where you go, it's going to see you. It's funny because a lot of our monsters are like perfect predators. We're really scared of the perfect predator, skinwalkers, wolfmen, things like that, because they can see you and then they could see you in the dark, and then they could smell you.
That reminds me of like, because in Indonesia, as you guys know, it's a very haunted country. Hospitals, especially, there's a lot of ghosts in Indonesian hospitals, especially old ones. Even though it's not abandoned, it's still right there. So one time, my clairvoyant uncle went to the hospital to like, took my cousin because my cousin was sick, and he was sitting in the hallway waiting, and he saw this demon, and I've learned it from him as well. I actually just learned this like a month ago that I totally forgot to mention it. It's called Suster Ngesot. So Suster Ngesot has like a history of its own where the doctors, from what I know, correct me if I'm wrong, Indonesians, it's like the doctor will actually cut the nurses. So Suster Ngesot means, I don't know what the word Ngesot is, but Suster means nurse. So it's basically a nurse ghost. Mm-hmm. So Suster Ngesot, yes. Basically the story of the folklore is that the doctor was having some problems with the nurse, and because the doctor was abusive, he will cut her legs. And from that day on, Sister Ngesot is just a demon. It will appear at night or sometimes in the mornings, sometimes if depending on the ghost mood, and it will like drag themselves walking like this and blood gashing out the floor like that. So it's like walking like...
Yeah, the crawling ghost
is no
is
legs at all.
And
exactly too. Long hair, scary face. Like I said, guys, Indonesian ghosts, lots of long hair people. Long hair ghosts.
Strangely reminds me, and I don't know what culture it comes from, but it's a ghost that wears a surgical mask. And I think it's a nurse, but basically under the surgical mask is like a horrible deformity, like the lips have been ripped off or something to that effect, but it wears the surgical mask. And it's interesting because now that we're in the pandemic, wearing a mask like that is so commonplace. But if I'm not mistaken, she comes up and she asks, do you think I'm pretty? And if you don't answer correctly, she will slash your face.
Oh, the Chelsea smile kind of.
Yeah, the Gwyn plane.
Yeah.
That is so familiar because
Isn't it? Well, when you're talking about the nurse, I was like, there was a nurse ghost. What was the nurse ghost? I think it was, and I think it's Asian in origin somewhere.
It might be Thailand because Thailand is very scary too. So scary. Like, I think I watched a Thailand movie Ghost, and that traumatized me for life. So it's a theater ghost. And this ghost was actually a human before doing some acting. So one time there's a scene where she has to get hanged, just hanged like that, like getting killed. But then the director was like, you gotta hang her more. And then when they actually pulled her more, they didn't realize that they did it too much, and she died in the set by hanging. So from that day on, every time you go to theater in Thailand, if you go to a theater in Thailand, in the movie itself, that ghost will appear hanging with white eyes, like no mouth, and she's just like, oh. And her eyes are completely white. And if you're there alone in the cinema, she will crush your eyes and you die. So your eyes are no longer, and she will eat your eyeballs. And you die in the cinema like, yep, that Thailand movie. I forgot the name, but
there is an American movie, and I think it's a found footage movie called The Gallows. And it is, so the story being someone was actually hanged on stage during a production by accident, and then they haunt the theater. And I think the movie's about a group of kids who want to see if the ghost of that person is there. But, so, first off, every theater is haunted.
Yeah.
Every theater,
every
single one.
Yes.
And one of the interesting things about just that concept is the idea of what a theater is. A theater is a place where people gather, focus their energy. They all come together to enjoy something. So it's a perfect place for a ghost to feel alive. A spirit can just sit amongst the living and experience the same thing as the living at the same time as the living. And then add big electric lights. And we know that electricity is something that spirits can feed off of. Big electric lights, lots of emotion, high laughs and tears and music and things. So oftentimes in a theater, you might experience ghosts that have nothing to do with the theater itself. They were just drawn in. there are a lot of homeless ghosts in the world.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody
Oh,
wants to
yeah.
believe that ghosts are like, this house is haunted. But the truth of the matter is, it could be anywhere. And lots of ghosts are just kind of milling about. And then they see this bright, shiny light, and they'll go in. And with that knowledge, any place that will draw spirits will draw the good and the bad.
Just like
you know?
Betty.
Right. You know,
Yep.
they'll
Betty
just come in.
from the
Savannah Theater.
Savannah
yeah.
Theater.
Elizabeth.
Yes.
She does not like being called Betty. We learned that the hard way.
Really?
Jinkies. Oh, I've been
So should
calling
I
her
just
that
say-
for a long time.
That was the
too.
classic. I mean,
Yeah.
I was introduced to Betty in 1993.
yeah.
And we called her Betty forever. And then we literally got like a EVP. Very clearly, it's Elizabeth. Like, oh.
Should
I'm
I
sorry.
say that in the tour next time? Her name is
Yeah, I'm going to make that adjustment. I don't want to offend her.
I
you
don't
know?
want
It's-
that.
And that was the
I'm
interesting
sorry.
thing is
Elizabeth.
It was so commonplace. We didn't even know who she was, you know. But since then, we've learned that there was a fire and that she was under the stage.
Under the stage getting
And
ready.
so, fascinating like tidbits that came through a lot of research and figuring it out. But it's Elizabeth.
Elizabeth.
I have a picture of Elizabeth.
Noted. Ooh.
I do.
Love it.
I am interested in it.
Yeah.
Because every time I do tour, I'm like, a beautiful girl named Betty. A beautiful girl named Betty. Now I should say a beautiful girl named Elizabeth.
And the boy is Benjamin.
Yes.
Ben.
Oh, there's
And-
another guy as well.
Oh,
There?
And
yeah.
the director is George.
Yes.
Although recently, a very forceful male answering to Billy has been present at the Savannah Theater. So if you wanted to discuss Billy, who was a director at the Savannah Theater, seemingly.
Interesting.
Yeah. Ben's the little boy who basically he just plays jokes on
Yeah.
people. And
Well, a lot of kids are like
Yeah.
that. They just like to tug on your clothing
Yeah.
to get your attention.
he doesn't
Trickster.
he like misfire cues and like hang
So,
up in the
My
lighting
Ben
booth.
story is I worked in that theater for almost 30 years. And so I was a spotlight op on a show, and I'm following the actors, and then I'm trying to follow the actor, and the spotlight won't move. And I'm like, that's weird. Why won't it move? And I turn and I look, and my extension cord was tied in a bow around the base of one of the seats, the bolted down seats. And I'm like, how is that? And so when I tell people, oh, yeah, that, and mind you, we didn't even come to the name Benjamin until like 2000 in the aughts. So at the time, it was just a kid. And some people thought it was a girl. Some people thought it was a boy. Most people thought it was related to the woman on stage. They were like, oh, it's her child. It's like, oh, that's sad.
Yeah, right?
That's really tragic. But they're unrelated.
Yeah.
They're about
I
100
do
years
have a
apart.
question though. In this place that we're interviewing right now, the underground, is there like a children ghost that I've been feeling as well?
It is highly possible. There is all sorts of energy that kind of bounce around in this area.
Yeah.
So it is very likely, especially because we talk about children ghosts so often in this building, and especially just me in general. I love talking about kid
Yeah.
ghosts. It's very likely one just is picking up on that we're giving that attention, and it's kind of made its way here.
Sure.
So,
Absolutely.
Yeah. I've seen like a various few. There's only like 2 that are genuinely like kind of attached to
Yeah.
this area, but
Because my mom, when I took her to the underground, when like she did the tour, she likes the tours, but when she gets like a lot of like how do we call it, like goosebumps. Yeah,
Yeah.
goosebumps in the trolley. So when I told her you can come into the show, she's like, no, I am not going in there. Oh no, Luna, screw that, I'm staying in the trolley with you. I said okay, but at the end we took her in because I wanted to show her how it looks like, like everyone's gone and she's in the underground. And she told me this, I don't know if she told you guys, but the moment she enters the underground, her body felt so much goosebumps, especially when she saw that bed, it's Annabelle, right? The Annabelle bed, she looked at it like for straight 10 seconds because someone was there sleeping. It's probably a child, and she couldn't feel her legs anymore. She was just like, her whole legs turned white, and she's like, yeah, I'm going out. But then I think the rest of the crew here was like, oh, we're gonna, do you want to go into the demon house? And my mom was like, no, I'm staying in the spot. No way I'm going. Because my mom also said in the demon room, she saw like a lady crying, which is true, right? And I said, yeah, there's a lady crying because every time I stare there, I will cry. That's probably, it's probably one Asian ghost that I saw as well. It's like part of the Indonesian ghost that was so related. It's because kuntilanak and sunda bolong, they're, like I said, they're pretty similar. So I sometimes felt there's one there, but not disturbing, probably just depressed from the war or something, because like Indonesian ghosts are jinns that's also like related to, it can be Western ghosts too, but it's also mostly Indonesian because Indonesians were, I heard something.
Oh, it's okay. I think
there's a lot of crickety crackities.
Yeah.
Scary. Yeah. Indonesian ghosts, they're just everywhere. But like, I think the Western countries doesn't really know about them because the Indonesians, I think, saw it more and named them. But they're actually, like I said, everywhere. So I've seen some.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Well, it's interesting because I'm called to a friend of mine who she used to live on Oglethorpe Square, and one night. There was a woman crying outside in the courtyard of her apartment complex. She looked out the window and saw this woman crying, and it was like, must have been a breakup or something like that. She told me that the next day when she was coming out of her building, the woman was still there in the courtyard, just crying. So, being the modern person she was, she just ignored the woman and walked by.
Yeah.
But as she walked by, the woman turned and followed her all the way to her classroom, and she went into class, and the woman literally was standing outside the building, and when she came out of the class, the woman was still there. And so my friend was just like yelling at her, like, what is going on? What is your problem? And everyone around her was like, who are you talking to? She's like, this woman. So for 10 years, that woman followed her everywhere, never went into a building, but followed her everywhere. She said when she drives, she feels the woman behind the car just being dragged along. And for 10 years, when she flies, she says the woman is in the cabin of the plane. When she's, so she got a house in upstate New York that had a really long driveway. And the woman would stand at the end of the driveway. She wouldn't come up onto the property.
Did she specifically say what the ghost looks like?
Long black hair, can't see her face.
Hey, you know what
covered
that's called,
their hands.
guys?
Yeah.
Probably a sunda bolong.
That's just it. But it fits with all kinds because La Llorona looks like that, and there are lots of even accounts of banshees.
Oh yeah.
Will sometimes fall into that category. So it's interesting because it's like how fascinating that these cultures are able to identify the crying woman. The crying woman is a constant ghost of every culture, which is really sad because in Japanese, one of the scariest Japanese stories is about the shogun samurai who wanted to marry a new woman, so he poisoned his wife so that he could marry the new woman. But the wife, the poison was really terrible, and it hurt so bad that it took her days and days to die, and her lips turned black, and she started crying, blood, and she'd walk around, and she'd walk in the garden just crying all the time, and then finally she died. Well, the samurai started getting haunted by the sound of his wife crying, and when he would look at a cup, he would see her face on the cup, this eyes, and it kept just building and building until he could see her in the courtyard, crying, walking, crying, long black hair covering her face, but there's blood in her eyes, and she's crying. And so the new wedding day came, his bride's coming down, they're standing getting married, and the bride starts crying like that. He looks over, he sees his dead wife, and he kills his new bride with a samurai sword because he thinks that it's his ex-wife, and he does it in front of everyone.
Oof.
So it's such a and it's a potent story, and that's an
long
old
hair ghost.
Of course,
Always.
always.
I'm always wondering why this Asian cultures has a lot of like long-haired women ghosts. That's what I've been wondering the whole time. Like kuntilanak and sunda bolong, very similar. Sadako, a Japanese ghost from like coming out the TV.
Right, exactly.
Long hair ghost too.
Exactly.
Like
The Grudge.
I'm wondering what's the long hair specifically relate to.
I mean, like, I'm obviously not Asian, so I can only give you my kind of take of it. Yeah. But in a lot of cultures and history, your power is associated with your hair. You can see that even in the Bible, where Delilah cuts Samson's hair and he loses all of his power. So there's a lot of folklore that associates with that. So maybe that's how these spirits are kind of staying alive. Is they lose their hair, they're no longer.
And there's also when you give to Asian culture enough, when you look at like prominent Asians and wealthy Asians and well-to-do Asians, the women are oftentimes with very elaborate headdress. Their hair is up, and that is how you can tell their vibrancy of life was. They would keep it and ornate with jewels and everything like that. But these ghosts, it's down in front of their face. It's ragged. It's straight. It is suggesting that they are furthest from society because they're not caring for this very outward appearance of themselves, because hair is in many places, even in America, like the way you keep your hair, the way you dress your hair is an indication of how well you care for yourself, how affluent you are. When people say, oh, your hair's messy, they think, well, that's low class. And so when you think of the dejected spirits, when you think of these spirits that live on the outlying, the fact that they look like that kind of suggests that they want something from you, that they're not complete. They're not whole. They're not cared for. And so they are coming for you. That's one way to look at it. I'm not saying that that's the answer. It's just interesting because you're right. That concept, the hair, the long stringy hair and hiding the face and things like that. And that's another thing, hiding the face.
Yeah, like Sadako, the Japanese ghost.
So many ghosts, if you can't see their face, it's the mystery of it and the fear of it. There should be a face there, but it's not there, and I'm freaking out.
You're hiding your face. I'm Asian, and I still don't know why the long hair is related to them. Thanks, Madison. I love it.
That's just my guess.
No, I think that's
a real.
That makes sense so much.
Yeah.
What about I'm curious about Korean ghosts that you know.
So
I've seen
my favorite Korean ghost story. Well, it's a Korean boogeyman, and the Korean boogeyman is named after persimmons. Its name is persimmons. The Korean word for persimmons.
I know, right? It's
I don't
so
even know what
cute.
it is. It is. It's and it is the fruit. The sweet, sweet fruit. Because when I asked my mom this when I was a kid, I was like, "What's the boogeyman of Korea? What's the monster of Korea?" And my mom said, "A tiger." I was like, "Well."
It's just a tiger.
Well,
right?
It's scary because tigers can come into your house and just eat you, and that was a thing. Apparently, at some point, the tigers were close enough to humans that they posed a threat. And then my mom would tell me the story about persimmons, which is the big bad boogeyman. And I was like, okay, what's the story? And the story is actually very cute. It's basically a tiger is skulking through a village, and this baby is crying. And so the mother is telling the baby, please, 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 don't cry. The tiger will get you. And the tiger's out there going, yeah, I will. Here I come.
Oh, no.
And the mom is like, you must be quiet. You must be quiet. The tiger will get you. And the tiger's like, yep, I'm coming. Num, 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 num. And then finally, the mom says, well, what about a persimmons? And she puts a persimmons in the baby's mouth, and the baby stops crying, and the tiger freezes. And the tiger thinks, what is this thing that's more frightening than a tiger? The baby wouldn't be quiet because the tiger is coming, but it was quiet for persimmons. So the tiger became afraid of persimmons because persimmons must be a worse and more scary creature than a tiger. So the tiger left for fear that it was going to run into persimmons. So persimmons became the name of the thing scarier than a tiger. And so they'll say, persimmons is going to get you. The persimmons is going to catch you. The persimmons is coming for you.
Roll a persimmon in front of the tiger, and it will stop it in its
persimmons. That's actually really cute.
It's like a it looks like a tomato, but tastes like a peachy.
Is that like
nectarine.
the English word?
That's the English word. I don't actually know the Korean word.
Oh, okay.
But because my mom didn't say the Korean word, she said persimmons.
Persimmons.
Yeah, they're really common, especially in the South. Mm-hmm. It's just a tiny little fruit, which makes it even more comical because tigers are like, rah, and then like persimmons are just like. Because it made the baby quiet. The tiger thought it was more afraid of persimmons than it was afraid of tigers. So it just became a common word to mean scarier than a tiger. So it becomes like a blanket term. Like if something's really scary, it's a persimmon. It's coming for you. Yep. At first, where I thought you were going with this story was the tiger saw the baby and was like, "Oh, that's horrifying." And I'm like, honestly, what's scarier than anything else? A child.
Yeah, children are very frightening.
Yeah.
But my mom does not indulge in ghost stories, nor does she tell them, nor does she like them. So
Same like my mother, guys.
We were definitely never like familially. We did not talk ghosts. My sister was very sensitive, but we were of a family that was very down to earth. You know, it's like what you see is what you get, and do what you can with it.
Yeah.
But in my case, it was in Germany. We were just living in incredibly haunted places. We were just living in these places. We moved to these places. I lived in Italy. We moved as a family to Italy, and they were literally like, "Oh, you know, there's an old monastery up there that was taken over by satanic priests, and you know, it's right there. It's right one bicycle ride away from where you're standing is a monastery that was solely used for devil worship." I'm like, am I supposed to just stay here?
Yeah.
Am I supposed to just live in this house knowing that there's this thing right over there?
Yeah, that reminds me a lot of Bali, because Bali is part of Indonesia as well, but it is the most spiritual place ever. Very ghosts, so many ghosts, and super spiritual. So one time, actually, my friends and I were on vacation like 3-4 years ago to Bali because high school graduation. Yes. So we went to Bali and we saw a statue, a very, very sacred statue. Like, bear in mind, there's a lot of statues in Bali, and they're very sacred and very haunted, not haunted in a good way and bad way somehow, but because Bali is a Hindu area, so they believed in a demon called the Barong. I'm sorry if I called it a demon. I don't want to
I was like,
but Barong is actually a folklore. Did I say correctly? Folklore or folklore?
Folklore.
Folklore.
Wow, I've been saying it wrong.
It's okay. We
Although
got you.
folklore is kind of nice. I like the ring of that.
Oh, thank you.
Keep that in mind.
Folklore, right?
Yes, folklore.
So folklore called the Barong. Barong is a demon, and what the Balinese people believe that it's their god. So we went to this place, and it's very, very sacred and ritual, and there's a lot of statues. And one of my friends was being really dumb. He went to the statue, make fun of the statue. Whoa, it looks weird, blah, blah, blah. Like touching the head and something. It was very, very rude. And then when we got home to our Airbnb, guess what? His whole body hurts.
Oh, I believe it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And then I keep telling him, do not make fun of the statue, because at first he didn't believe anything. He didn't believe in ghosts and anything at all. So he's like, "Oh my God, this statue looking so weird," or like whatever. And I told him, please do not do that. Do not disrespect my country. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." And my friend actually helped me. "Don't touch the statue. This is her country. Stop." And I felt really like mad. So when we got to the Airbnb, his whole body hurts. His stomach was the worst, and he couldn't move his body at all. And I'm like, what did I tell you about Bali? See, literally goosebumps right now, guys. Bali, don't play with them. Don't play anything in
That's
Bali.
a fair and safe thing to say about
Very
any
much
place.
so.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, the last entity you want to piss off is a deity to begin
exactly.
with. So
Yeah.
it's like,
Exactly.
and I totally believe that his stomach was hurting because, and I'm pretty sure, definitely with Hindu religion, that they believe your core is
right.
the center of
Right.
your power. That deity was very upset, I'm sure.
Oh,
and
very,
was like, let
very-
me zap you real quick of all
Yeah.
your energy. You know?
Very-
Yeah, and it gets very confusing with a lot of the Asian deities and things. I had a martial arts instructor who had a statue, an altar, really, to the Chinese god of war, Quan Ti, and I learned about Quan Ti as the god of war, and I'm like, oh, god of war, great.
Yeah.
Went to, and so now I'm an adult. I'm at a Chinese restaurant, and I look over, and there's Quan Ti.
Yep.
Yeah, the altar. You know, he has the Dan Dao, the big bladed spear looking thing, and he's right there. I'm like, oh, they've got an altar to Quan Ti. They must be martial artists. So I ask, oh, are you martial artists? And they look over and they're like, oh no, that's Quan Ti. And I was like, yeah, but Quan Ti's the god of war. And they're like, he's the god of war and tofu.
Tofu? I love
like,
tofu, guys.
too.
Delicious food.
Excuse me? And they're like, yeah, he's the god of tofu. And I'm like, I am sorry, I don't understand. And technically, he's the god of like agriculture, but more specifically soy agriculture, thereby deriving to god of tofu. But it really freaked me out. I was like, what? What are you saying? And I was like, because gods take on a lot of responsibilities in different cultures, and you never know when you're stepping on a god's toes. You know, so just be respectful. Just be
Don't disrespect his tofu.
I'm glad I wasn't standing in front of him going, "Oh, tofu is terrible. I hate tofu." And it's like, "Oh, Quanti's gonna chop you in half."
Tofu is the most delicious food ever.
I love it.
Mapo tofu, guys.
Yes,
my Chinese culture.
Yeah.
I love it. So I love that we kind of like started talking a little bit about haunted objects too, because that we can definitely correlate anywhere in the world too, just because even in this room we've got so many haunted objects, which I
got a trunk full.
Oh yeah.
I could go and get my kit, my haunted goodies. My wife won't let me bring into the house.
We actually have something that when you brought up how your mom felt like the spirit of a little girl or something of that nature, it made me wonder, because I have a haunted doll in this theater that was my grandmother's.
Oh, yeah.
But we have never been able to figure out who is in that doll. We have kind of dabbled in the idea that maybe, it was maybe her mother or something.
Yeah.
It's definitely not my grandmother, because she's got other purposes, and let alone, hanging out in a doll all day long. But I wonder if that might be what's kind of hanging out in that doll. It's always been haunted since I've ever had it, since I was a small child.
Right.
So, and I'm pretty sure because our set designer hates this doll and she hides it.
Oh, is it the one in the demon room?
It used to be. And Shelby took it and hid it somewhere where no one could find it because she just hates the doll so much. I mean, I get it. I didn't like the doll either as a child because it stares at you. It watches you. It moves and things like that. So she might have been pushing out some extra energy.
She also told me that JT will actually hide the doll somewhere and trick her, and Shelby would get so mad about it.
It moves on its own.
It moves on its own.
But interesting enough, because dolls are perfect traps.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So a lot of times a spirit will attach itself to a doll, because dolls, they look like humans. They have bodies, and that is very attractive to a spirit. There was a long period of time when puppetry was outlawed by the church because they believed that puppetry was a type of evocation. You were actually inviting spirits to embody a doll. Yeah. But that concept stands that if you are in a vessel that a child would be drawn to or would pay attention to or interact with, so dolls, they're twofold. They could be a child who really loved the doll is still attached to the doll, but it's also something that wants children to come around. It's something that wants the interaction that comes from being a child's plaything. I've encountered a lot of scary dolls. Dolls are creepy.
Now that you guys remind me about dolls, not just like historical dolls, like even though you buy like a new doll, ghosts would actually love coming to your doll. So one time, my mom actually told me this story a long time ago that I remember. So I have like a bunch of dolls back in Hong Kong. Like I love collecting dolls, especially when I won in Universal Studios, I won this big doll from The Simpsons, the Clown Simpson. What is he named?
Oh, it's Scratchy or something?
No, Krusty the Clown.
That's what it was. Yeah.
So I won this big doll, Krusty, at Universal Studios Hollywood. So I brought it back to Hong Kong, and I put it there, and I collect a bunch of dolls. So I haven't cleaned like that area for like 6 months because I've been busy with school. So my mom was like, you know what? I'll clean it. I will help you. So when she was cleaning it and she moves the dolls and the dust, there's like lots. She saw thousands of spirits probably like crumpled together and then gushed into her body and went out after my mom moved all the dolls, literally gushing in her body. And she just felt like she froze for like a good 5 minutes and like, whoa, what? And then she called me, you gotta go home now. You gotta go home now. I'm alone. Because at the time I was like with friends and she wants me to go home so bad because she was panicking. So I ran home. She's like, you need to throw away these dolls. I'm like, why? I love them. Do you know how many souls there are inside that big doll and some of the small dolls, Luna? Literally gushing into me when you haven't cleaned this for 6 months and all the dust. I'm like, oops. And she's like, and I told her, I thought ghosts only likes to come to like dolls only when it's like haunted or belongs to someone. And she's like, nope. They like to go into other dolls or new dolls, whatever they like. Yeah. So be careful of keeping dolls. That's what my mom said. I'm like, okay.
All my life, I get the question about, does something have to be old? Does it have to be creepy? Does it have to be... No, absolutely not. Spirits are very opportunistic. Anything that can garner human attention oftentimes is a high... I'm surprised that we don't have a lot of stories about haunted phones.
Yeah.
A lot of stories about, the haunted tech world. I'm sure it's coming. But the truth of the matter is, whatever humans put their affection and attention on can draw spirits. Pets, a lot of times, are victim of harassment because we spend so much time adoring them that spirits are like, I want that adoration. I want that, And with dolls, it's an interesting thing because spirits, in my estimation, spirits have connections to things. And let's say I go into a building that is very haunted and a spirit says, oh, I like this guy. And he'll grab onto me and piggyback home with me. Well, it can't maintain it because it has a connection somewhere else. And as hard as it tries to hold on to me, that connection somewhere else is pulling on it. So I always tell people, if you've been to a haunted place, don't go straight home. Stop somewhere else because the ghost might let go there and try to find something to attach to. But if it makes it to your house, it's going to look for something to attach to. And one of the most likely things to do is a figure that looks like a human. One of the most frightening, scary haunted objects I ever came across was a little figurine. It was a clown dressed as a bear, which was so many things wrong with it. And it was like balancing on a ball. So it was a little figurine. It had a human face, but it was painted like a clown and a bear body. Very weird, but the item itself just created such dread and such force, and it was just one of those things. And I was trying to help a person deal with a haunting in their house, and I kind of derived to, I think it's this thing, because this thing makes me go blah, and I'm not I'm not sensitive like that, but it was broadcasting loud to me, and I'm like, you got to get rid of it. And I was like, well, it was a gift, and I was like, it's a terrible gift. Whoever gave it to you really didn't like you. And so they told me where they got it. I took it back to the store. It was an antique store, antiques. And I was like, excuse me, I would like to return this. And he looked at it and he said, yeah, all right. And he put it in the window. And I was like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I've sold that thing 4 times in the last 10 years. It always comes back because people can't stand to have it in their house.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I'm like, you can't put the...
He's like, well, the next victim will come around.
Right, exactly. Someone else will buy it. He's not losing money.
He's just not going to say anything how haunted that doll is.
Well, and I like to think this is true of antique dealers. They just... It doesn't faze them. They're not interested in that. They're interested in the history of it, and anything that happens to be attached to it, it doesn't factor into the business. Right. Same antique store sold a very haunted painting that was hanging in an inn, and they really guests of the inn were like, this painting freaks me out. Can we not have it in my room? And so they moved out of the room into a hallway. People were like, yeah, I walk by it and it freaks me out. And he was telling me the story. He was like, yeah, they brought the painting back. And I was like, that's weird. No one's ever complained about the painting before, but it was a painting of a man. And there's another painting of his wife. And they've always hung on walls side by side. But this one inn just wanted the man and separated the 2 paintings. And then everybody got very freaked out.
Yeah, of course.
And so they brought it back. And apparently that seemed to do the trick.
So the thing with the technology and spirits, I find that they tend to go for things that are simple communications, like children's toys that talk. I actually had an experience with a children's toy that my mom told me about. So my little sister used to love Teletubbies a lot. So she had all of these Teletubbies that talked. You press their button and they would just be like, or whatever. And so she had so many of these, but the I believe it was the yellow one. For some reason, it would just talk on its own all the time. It freaked my mom out because she'd hide it and it would come back out. She'd try to take the batteries out and it would still talk and whatnot. And I'm like thinking of that now because she was telling me this probably like 6 years ago. And I was like, dude, just throw it away. Just give it away or something. You know, it's
especially if you get like young children. I had a friend who had one of those like little baby angel statues, and their like 2-year-old used to go up and talk to it, just babble, and put its ear against its mouth, and as if it was getting information back and forth, and it was kind of creepy. And I was like, well, that's interesting because it makes you wonder if you're dealing with the fact that spirits can attach themselves to virtually anything, and the younger a child is, the closer it is to the source. What happens before we're alive and what happens after we're alive. The younger a child is, the closer it is to being in that well of whatever, and having access to that information. So very interesting.
Yeah. So I do want to say thank you to Luna for joining us again. You are always a wealth of interesting stories and lots of creepy things that...
Very creepy.
I love to hear about it. So
I would also like to learn more about Indonesian ghosts because I only lived in Indonesia till I was 8 years old. So coming back to my uncle and learning all these ghosts is like mind-blowing. So I can't wait to talk more about Indonesian ghosts, but I've learned a few that in the past months that I just forgot the names because scary, you know?
And, well, maybe one day we can Zoom your uncle in and he can give us more insight and creepy things.
That'll be perfect. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we will be back next week with more content for all of y'all. Make sure to follow us on TikTok and Instagram at the Savannah Underground. And we're going to be posting lots of little snippets of ghosty things on there. Also, we are planning to come out with merch for y'all, so please feel free to send us comments, send us messages of things that you might want to see on that. So with that being said, I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And I'm Luna.
And Luna. Stay spooky, y'all.